This morning, we are going to hear about Dave Day, which was this. We were just discussing what the numbers were for Dave Day, and Joe was saying there's unofficially about 40,000 bikers, we reckon, took part in Dave Day in some way, shape, or form, which, as you will all know, was a celebration to Dave Myers, who sadly passed away, who was from Barrow, of course. And we reckon the population of Barrow is about 60,000. Is that what we agreed? So I'm just looking. Where's Joe? Joe on my screen. There she is. So for you, that's like a big lump of extra people for Barrow. So really interesting to get Joe's take on how that all went. I know also that Ian, who's got that magnificent backdrop this morning of lots of bikers, who's a biker himself, stood at the roadside in Ulverston and watched this thing take place as well. And I suspect that one or two other people in the south of the county may have enjoyed it as well. So we'll just get a sort of cultural take, I suppose, on what was Dave Day? What was that? Were we expecting that? Where do we go with that? Is that a one-off? Don't know. And then also we're going to hear from Zoe Hebblethwaite from and Lorna Singleton, who have been working on a project driven by Zoe. And what is CAFS is Cumbria
Action for Sustainability.
Action for Sustainability. Thank you, Zoe. So a really interesting project, and I know that Zoe is keen to try and get the arts and culture sector a little bit more involved in that. And Lorna can share some experiences of how she's benefited from that program that Zoe's going to tell us about as well. So that is the plan for this morning. Before we do that, Kate, do you want to just mention these Thrive surgeries that you've been involved in recent days? I know it's been taking up quite a bit of your time, but this is a Westmorland and Furness initiative as well. Just tell us what you've been doing.
Yeah, so Cumbria Arts and Culture Network has partnered with Westmorland and Furness Council to support them in dishing out their UK Shared Prosperity funding to arts and culture organisations. They set aside a sum of money, quite a big sum of money, to give to smaller cultural organisations, having already given a chunk to each of the regularly funded Arts Council funded organisations, the NPOs as we call them. And I think it's a brilliant thing that they are making a particular effort to get money into the smallest cultural organisations as well. So we partnered with them to find the best way to do this. And we've worked with them to create a really straightforward application process. Not only is it a very simple form, but it's also accompanied by a workshop, rather a sort of surgery that we've done with each of the applicants who are eligible. So quite a lot of surgeries that I've been part of with Kate Geargill, who's the Arts and Culture Officer, and one of the Economic Development team members from Westmorland and Furness. And we've worked with each applicant for an hour to just look through their application, talk to them about it, answer any questions, help them make the best possible case, really. And then they complete the sort of full application, which is not much more work than the initial one, before they submit their applications in early July. And then hopefully that Westmorland and Furness will be able to get capital and revenue funding out to quite a lot of small cultural organisations and heritage organisations. So it's been an interesting week to talk to all of those people and hopefully to be helpful. And there's more to come next week. So watch this space and we'll see where the money goes. But I just wanted to say that it's a bit of a fresh approach to be able to support people to make good applications rather than just chuck an application at people and kind of watch them struggle. Yeah, so good on Westmorland and Furness.
So how many have you done this week?
I've lost count, dozens. But it has been interesting. I've loved it. Just to meet all these people doing wonderful, wonderful things. So yeah, really positive.
And I know you are doing it out of the goodness of your heart, but you're not doing it just out of the goodness of your heart either. CACN's getting a bit of money for this, isn't it? For the sort of consultancy.
CACN is being paid small amounts of money to support the process, and I'm glad that we can play that role, really, and hopefully we'll be able to do more of it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good.
I'll put my FOI into you, Kate, rather than the council, shall I? I've got one drafted.
No, I'd expect nothing less from you, Joe. Right. Okay, well, thank you, Kate, and thank you for doing all of that. And I hope that people benefit. I'm sure they will from your expertise and wisdom from applications experience over the years. Right. Well, let's look into Dave then. So Joe Reilly at Art Gene. Are you a Barovian? Were you
I
born?
am
I
very
thought so,
proud
yeah.
of you indeed.
Yeah. So this was a phenomenal day for Barrow. Um, and I'm just going to hand over the airways to Joe. I've got a couple of little clips which we'll show at the end, Joe, of bits I've
Thank you.
picked up off the internet, just sort of 60-second clips just to remind us ourselves. But I know you've got a lovely presentation which Amy will get up for you now.
Yeah.
Tell us your thoughts and your reflections of what you experienced and what you saw.
Thanks very much, Tom, for allowing me to talk about this and at quite short notice as well. I think Dave Day was such a phenomenon. I just thought it was important for this group just to take a moment to acknowledge it, and I hope in doing so I haven't halved your usual audience with talk of motorbikes and Barrow. But in my opinion, it felt to me like a really important cultural event, a really important moment in Barrow's history. Barrow's short history. It's not a town that's existed for very long, and perhaps a cultural event to rival any that's happened in Cumbria. I don't know. You know, outside Kendal Calling, I'm not sure there's very much of that scale that happens very often. So yeah, I just want to take a moment and celebrate something really positive that happened in Barrow last weekend. Amy wants to drive the slides, so if I could. So this is how it started. It started on with a Facebook page, and if you haven't looked at the Dave Day Facebook page yet, it's called Dave Day 8th of June 2014. I would highly recommend it. It's a week on, more than a week on. It's still incredibly active. The amount of positivity on there is absolutely phenomenal, and you'll see more photos of Dave than you ever could imagine existed. So if we have our next slide, these are the people that made it happen. So that's Woody, Jason Woodcock on, I'm not sure which is left and right, I'm not very good at left and right, but Simon King in the middle, and then Lily, Dave Meyer's wife, on the other side. All three of them bikers, all three of them very, very close to Dave Meyer's, and really keen to celebrate his life as someone who was a phenomenal force for good, someone who was an incredible, positive, bubbly, lovely, friendly, warm individual who came from Barrow and was incredibly proud of coming from Barrow. I think Barrow right now is on the cusp of something, and I think Barrow needs all of those qualities that Dave encapsulated. We need as much positivity as can come our way, and if we have that, I think we can do some great things over the next few years. So they chose, because they're bikers, to organise a biking memorial ride from London to Barrow, the place that Dave loved. But I don't think they could ever have imagined the kind of result of their efforts. Dave wanted Barrow to be put on the map. He tried to put it on the map himself. He would come here and make TV programmes. He'd highlight some of his favourite shops, and he'd take film crews round both the urban reality of Barrow and also the fantastic coastal environment and nature. Yeah, I think the event really continued his legacy in incredibly important ways. So we can have the next slide. They did incredibly well. I don't know if any of you are involved in organising festivals. I'm not, I've never done it, but I think to organise an event of this scale in 3 months, you know, it was really quite something. Dave died in February. They had the idea for a memorial ride at the funeral, and the Facebook page was set up on the 22nd of March. In that time, they attracted, I think, something like 68,000 people to follow the Facebook page. There was an incredible buzz in Barrow right from the beginning. Perhaps, you know, I think it had a national reach. I was too busy in Barrow, I didn't see any national coverage, but people tell me who were on holiday that it was on World BBC News and that it was on the national news as well. So great story. I can see it be a great, you know, journalistic news story, but a great thing for Barrow. So yeah, a real buzz right from the beginning. The people of Barrow stepped up and were offering the bikers, free accommodation, free breakfast, secure bike parks, you name it. Everything was just being offered on a voluntary basis, which is absolutely wonderful. Westmorland and Furness really stepped up. I'm not sure the three organisers initially thought to inform Westmorland and Furness Council that they were doing it. I don't think they expected it to be quite so big. But when the council came on board and when the Barrow Improvement District came on board, they all pitched in. A huge number of volunteers got involved and it was really wonderful. David Hoffian, Westmorland Furness head of culture, was spotted by moi in a high-vis vest, volunteering as well. So that was really great to see. But yeah, quite an amazing achievement. So I'm here today because I think the event resonated with me on in four ways, really. So the picture, you can see the man holding the flag. That's my very own Dave. That's my partner. And so we, were determined from an early stage to have a Dave Day. Dave Day, we have Dave Days every day, but this event really appealed to us. And we, as early as I'd say late March, had already decided to plan our weekend around this event and make sure we were here. And then that's that. On the other side is that infamous image now of the bikes coming in to the region, which was incredible. If we could have the next slide. Yeah, so so I had my own Dave. That was the first reason it kind of resonated with me. But also Dave Myers himself, an incredible inspiration to me and others in Barrow. I could easily have said that quote, this is the place that made me who I am. I'll always be a Barrow girl at heart. He said that as recently as 2017. This is him back in his old primary school, Cambridge Primary School, in one of the most deprived wards in the town. And he and I, we share an early story. Sadly, I didn't go on to be a multimillionaire and cookery book writer and travel the world, but hey, you can't have it all. But yeah, our early lives were not dissimilar. Both felt we had to get out pretty early at 18 to make something of ourselves. He went to do fine art at Goldsmiths and went on to do a postgrad and became a makeup artist. I went off to study history, and there's a little bit of the historian in me that's kind of here today. So so you can see a few of his words on the screen there, and I can have the next slide. So the third thing that interests me was a professional interest. Obviously, I'm, as Tom has just said, wonderfully a cultural observer. But seriously, I spent most of my career in the strategy team of the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And I was one of those in the team that really pushed against the notion that heritage was about buildings, castles and palaces and that kind of high culture that often heritage is associated with. I was much more interested in, indeed I led on, amongst other things, something called intangible heritage. So the culture of real people, of those stories and memories, and the things that are slippery, hard to get hold of, but which form the people we are and the places we inhabit. So here's Dave looking over at Peel Castle, Rampside, where he once lived with his parents, experiencing the phenomenal natural heritage. And then there's a picture of his famous favourite pie shop, Greens. The jury's out on whether it is actually the best pie shop in the world, but Dave always went there when he was in Barrow and really championed it. It's I think you've got two images there of the juxtaposition of Barrow, very urban, dense terraces, lots of deprivation, but the most phenomenal natural heritage and great people. So if we go to the next slide. What was interesting to me about this weekend was I had no real, despite having led on cultural heritage for a major funder, I'd not really ever come across biker heritage, except mods and rockers. I've been to Brighton, I'd seen people arrive in big crowds. I'd seen a few rides out on motorways, but I understood that there was such a thing as a memorial ride, and that this, that there is a real biker culture. So I learned a lot this weekend as well, and that I love learning. That's another thing I thought was really incredibly interesting. And my top tip to I've forgotten your name, but the guy with the bikes behind him, is that I think biker culture could easily achieve a National Lottery grant. I think you should be spreading the word, and I wrote this web page on the National Lottery Heritage Fund website, which is still there. People thought that intangible heritage was too difficult to get their heads around, so we started to call it cultures and memories. So if you're looking for project ideas on the website, and do a search on cultures and memories. Yeah, but it can be about festivals and rituals and memories about a place or event. So I think this fitted really well. It could be the heritage of the future. I think cultural heritage is underrepresented in the National Lottery Heritage Fund portfolio. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there. Right, next slide. And then the fourth and last reason this resonated with me, and I think probably the most important one for me, is it made me think about the past and the future, hopefully not just entirely in a nostalgic way. Although it did, the event and Barrow's past, it does make me incredibly emotional and extremely proud. In Barrow we have a wonderful tradition, and in my lifetime and most of my memories of positive memories of Barrow are about street gatherings. You might know that we're known around the world for shipbuilding, and associated with that were launches. And so I haven't got very many good pictures here, but the streets would be lined in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up here with people waving flags, usually the Queen flying into Walney Airport, coming to throw a bottle at a boat. And we would line the streets, and it would be a cultural and town-wide phenomena. And then we also had a tradition of carnivals, very much part of intangible cultural heritage. Every year, Barrow, Dalton, Ulverston, Askham, all of the villages, they would each have their own carnival. It'd be like a 6-week period where we would just travel around all of the different places, and local businesses and local people and dance troupes would get out on the street and again raise money for charity and have a great time. I know there was an attempt to revive the Barrow Carnival in 2019 before COVID. I think it was a success. I wasn't there, but I think COVID probably has put an end to that. But I'd love to see summer carnivals back again in our region, and maybe you in other parts of Cumbria experience them still. So if we go to the next slide, so this is where I spent Dave Day, stood outside the Nantate Centre, which is happens to be my employer's headquarters. Our studios and galleries are there. If you haven't been there, it's a phenomenal Grade 2 listed building on Abbey Road, the kind of entryway into Barrow. So this is it in '99 on the day of a carnival, and last week, a picture I took of people stood outside our building. Next slide. Cultural partners, I should say a word about the way that cultural partners got involved, as we're the Culture, Arts and Culture the Arts and Culture Network. So yeah, there was a stage outside the town hall. The local authority are trying very much to make the space outside of the town hall, which looks onto the Forum, Barrow's Theatre, into more of a cultural space, a place where things happen more often. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a wind tunnel, so they're up against it, but they're trying really hard. And the stage was outside between 4 and 6 on last Saturday. The bikes started to come in at around about 4 o'clock, and there are some great images of crowds and crowds and crowds of people stood outside the town hall for this programme. So you can see, local music dignitaries got involved. The Abbey Musical Society and Jess Dandy is very well known in the area. You might know that the Liverpool Phil are doing work in Barrow at the moment, trying to fill the gap around music provision. And they were on the stage at 5 o'clock, as you can see there. And then the action moved over to the rugby club. So Barrow Raiders, got an incredibly famous rugby club in Barrow, rugby league, and the ground was full of trestle tables, and there were bands on into the evening. So this is the massive wagons with a photograph by Little Ninja Photography. So if we can go to the next slide. That's the rugby club, sorry. I'd say there was much more potential for the NPOs and other cultural partners to get involved. If it happens again, I think that would be the case. BUMS, which is Barrow Underground Music Society, they had a full day of activity going on that day. And Signal Arts and Media, they put some of their Sankey images of motorbikes in the window. But yeah, I would say that the sound system outside the town hall was absolutely dreadful. So if we can do it again, I'd say we perhaps might do better with a bit more kind of thought and planning. And then if we go to the next slide, we shouldn't forget that the day is all about the charities. So they set off, Woody, the organiser, set off with a target of 10 grand to raise for the SPCC Childline and Institute for Cancer Research. I took this screenshot this morning very early, and it was at 90 grand, and they're hoping to get to 100,000. So if you've got a few quid, you can bung it in there. But yeah, there is still a buzz, as I said earlier. And if I can have the next slide, Abby, please. There's lots of talk about what next. So the BID, which is Barrow Improvement District, that's a group of local businesses who come together. They organise, obviously businesses, including Archie, in fact, pay a levy each year. And with that, they organise events that try and just boost the image and reputation of the town. So we've had, dinosaur days and soapbox rallies and tall ships and all kinds of Transport Heritage Day, all kinds of things. So they're wondering whether this might be something that's added, to the annual calendar. But there's a mixed view, as in that first bullet tries to hint at. Some people just think it was a unique one-off thing. I imagine it was a very difficult thing to do, to drive on a motorbike, stopping and starting from London to Barrow. There are a lot of very limping people, shall we say, around town. Not an easy ride to do, so perhaps that might not be something people would want to repeat, who knows. But yeah, some people think it should be an annual event, some people think it should be a one-off and left to just be that wonderful one day. People think it could be turned into something new, so a motorbike and food festival or some other kind of day fest type activity. The timing might need to be looked at. I know Westmorland and Furness Council and the police, both of whom, as I said, did a great job. We're very concerned that the timing coincided with Appleby, because Barrow Police traditionally have drawn up to Police Appleby, so there was a bit of a resource issue. Westmorland and Furness have a consultation out at the moment. I'm really impressed with the new council, and this is one of the things that they've done, which I think is really quick off the mark and really helpful, asking people how they did, what they could do better, and yeah, actively seeking views, which I don't think Barrow Borough Council would have done in the old days. The tourism boost, interestingly, already in evidence. If you go to that Facebook page, people are already talking about coming back to Barrow next weekend, bringing their wives, and wanting to explore the area more, being knocked over by how wonderful the local environment is, but mostly emotionally touched by the response of the Barrovians, who lined the streets, who clapped them in, who high-fived them all the way, and who, as I said earlier, put them up and fed them. So yeah, that's a really wonderful boost to the reputation, I think, of Barrow and its people. But Zoe's here. Zoe and I happen to have worked together over the last 3 or 4 months, creating some videos showing how Barrow businesses have started on their decarbonisation journeys. We've written designed 10 case studies to go on the Green Enterprise Hub website and produce 5 films of Barrow businesses. Archie is a founding partner of Zero Carbon Cumbria, and we are an organisation that cares passionately about sustainability. When I stood outside Nantes, cupping those bikes in, I was, yes, moved by the spectacle and the amazing gesture of all of these people to come here. I was also very happy that it was a windy day, because if it had been a still day and those motorbikes have been coming down Abbey Road and that those fumes have been kind of hanging in the air, I think I might have had a few lung issues for a few weeks to come. So I think there is a serious conversation to be had about, if Cumbria is the leading county for decarbonisation, which it hopes to be, how can we balance these two things? I don't have the answer, but I leave that question there. And I'm conscious of time, so if we could just go on to the next slide. I don't know if news of Team Barrow has reached the rest of the county. This is what it is. I've been in public consultation meetings with very, very senior civil servants from Whitehall who are hanging around Barrow now and into the future, because Barrow needs to be able to take in 6,000 new workers, to have the housing and the cultural infrastructure to meet the ambitions of the government, the recent government, to ensure that our nuclear deterrent is in place and is secure. Team Barrow will be putting £20 million into Barrow each year for 10 years. I've been told that's not dependent on a change of government. We'll see about that, of course. But if that £200 million is knocking around, some of it inevitably going into culture in order to make Barrow an attractive place to live, an attractive place to be long term, it will be interesting. But I was struck in thinking about today, preparing, how Dave Day so far, I think, has done way more for Barrow than this huge team of civil servants working here for the last 3 months. That might switch around. I hope it does. But it just shows you what, the power of the people can achieve, and what 3 people, the original 3 organisers, what you can make happen if you have the passion and the will. So I talked about all of the ideas that people have had for how we can expand this legacy. If we go to the final slide, I've put a link in the chat to a crowdfunder I've got going at the moment. So I showed you the Nantate Centre earlier, with a beautiful blue backdrop behiund. This is the view out of the window of the Nantate Centre. It's an absolute blight on our conservation area. It's a bit of private land. And so I've got a crowdfunder going because it was up for auction. To try and buy it and turn it into a green space. Now that green space might offset a little of the day-to-day impact on our local pollution. Probably not much, but it could help. But that's not the reason I've put it here, and I've not really put it here for you to contribute, but I'd love it if you could. I've put it here because someone's emailed me yesterday to say, oh, I've seen that you're crowdfunding for that bit of derelict land, which is an eyesore and a blight on Barrow. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could turn it into a memorial park for Dave Myers? So there you go, the phenomena of community and wonderfulness. Thank you for listening.
Joe, thank you. That has been fantastic. What a insight into what it was like. Thank you really for sharing all of that stuff with us. Really interesting. So I'm just going to open the floor. I know that 1 or 2 other people, I've been enjoying Ian's ever-changing backdrop as well, as you've been talking, Joe. Open to the floor. Any other reflections, thoughts? Did you see Dave Day? What did you think? And those questions that Joe put forward in her presentation as well. Ian, I think you watched the bikes go by from Ulverston. Is that right?
Yes, I did. I was in the a central reservation where people were sitting with picnic tables and bottles of champagne, and just opposite Marks and Spencer, so they could nip over and get more top-ups all day. So it was good because there was the traffic lights there, and they all bunch up, and they can all beep the horns and wave the hands, and it's just how Dave would have liked it. I think, really, I mean, I think that's the overall thing, that he was such a gentleman, and it just shows you don't have to be, a certain type of character to be loved by the people, which he really was, You know, it's a shame we couldn't do it when he was alive. Really, that's my kind of overall thought. You know, but it brought Barrow, as you say, as to a throbbing heart on the map for the day. Really, it was just spontaneous. Is my word, I would say, for it.
Was was anyone sniffy about it? You know, was anyone going, oh, I'm not sure this is a good idea. You know, it's going to be a lot of hassle to organise and a bit dangerous. Bikers' reputation. You know, was anyone sniffy about it?
That's what amazed me. It was the people around me during the day. Very few of them were bikers. Very few of them would turn up to a biker meet or a car meet or something like that. And so it was almost irrelevant that there were bikes, which is kind of good. I didn't find any sniffiness at all.
Joe, is that your take as well?
Yeah. I mean, certainly on the day, just joy, absolute joy. In the run up, people are really excited about, you know, being able to do something in Dave's memory by giving something for free. You know, I suspect behind the scenes, you know, when that Facebook page was launched, and when it became apparent over the weeks, you know, that more and more people were joining, and it was going to be quite a large event. I imagine the council and the police, you know, had to really step up and think about, you know, crowd safety and planning and, you know, risk management. You know, I'm sure that wasn't easy, but no, in terms of the general public, I think they were really behind it.
Yeah. Anyone else see it or have a view? Andrew, were you around in Barrow at the time? Were you? Did you see it?
No, I went the other way to London.
Okay.
To a friend's graduation. So yeah, I wasn't there. I was talking about being sniffy. I wasn't sniffy. I was very skeptical when it was first launched as an idea, for all sorts of reasons, really. But obviously, as it progressed, it was obvious that it was a very direct human response to Dave Meyer's death, and a wish to celebrate his life and to show that, you know, Barrow in particular, the place he came from, was a special place that could commemorate his life in that way. So in the end, it was remarkable. I did wonder if it was raining all day and cold like this weekend, whether it would have been quite the same thing. And that worries me about events in Barrow. You mentioned, Joe, the sound system behind the town hall and the wind tunnel. You know, we're fighting the natural world quite often, and it's a matter of luck whether you get the weather or not, and not getting the weather can make things both a little bit more dangerous and a little more disappointing because it's not quite as good. But it was clearly a fantastic day, and it was fantastic to have a good news story about Barrow, because so often, certainly on the national news, if Barrow's talked about it, it's usually in a very negative way. So it's fantastic for that. And if my view is worth anything, I suspect repeating it would be a bad idea. I think these things happen once, and then a glorious things, repeating them, I think, is quite a difficult thing to do. But we could take the spirit of it and build on that. And I agree. You hinted at it, Joe, the amount of pollution that was caused by that many bikes traveling for 6, 7, 8 hours is not a minor amount of pollution and the rubber on the roads. You know, we know all about that, and so I think repeating it would be a dreadful thing. And one last thing, biker culture, like you say, is not particularly recognised, and the way that day succeeded was the fact that most bikers are responsible, grown up, mostly responsible people who love life and love camaraderie. Without that, I think it wouldn't be the same. But yeah, biker culture is something else entirely. And as a sound artist, you could do a whole pile of work around motorbikes.
Nice
You can
one.
all recognise a Harley Davidson, I'm sure, just by the engine. Anyway, I'll go.
Thank you, Andrew. Chris, then Ian.
Yeah, it's a shame Jenny's not here. She's out painting giant Smarties at the moment, but she was covering the day for Radio Cumbria, so she was there all day, and it was just she was overwhelmed with everybody she spoke to about Dave. There were sort of people he just met in sort of like someone he met in the gym ended up going to his wedding, and then someone he met in the corner shop ended up being a lifelong friend. It just seemed that everybody he sort of touched in his lifetime just absolutely loved him and just sort of became, he must have been such a lovely fella, and it would be I kind of disagree with Andrew. I think it would be good to sort of bring it back because it's such a lovely idea to build a sort of festival or celebration around. Maybe it could change and not be, maybe it'd be electric motorbikes only. I don't know, something a bit different. But yeah, it'd be good to seize on this love for this sort of lovely, genuine bloke. I think so. Yeah, it's a shame. Jenny be very eloquent about this, but yeah, she just came away feeling, oh, there was so much love and sort of pride in Barrow that day. I think, yeah, it would be a lovely thing to continue personally.
You may not be aware, Chris, I tried to entice Jenny onto this call this morning, but she said she had Smarties to paint and couldn't spare the time, sadly, but might get her back some other time.
It's another fine fest tomorrow, so we're going to
Exactly,
be
yeah.
we're going to be a flash mob giant Colin the Caterpillar cake. Maybe in the rain, but the festival shall continue. I mean, that's interesting actually, because it could be rainy tomorrow, but so another fine fest uses all the pubs and stuff around. So there's stuff going on all over, and we should just carry on regardless. And I imagine it's going to be a wonderful event nonetheless. I think the lightning might not be happening anymore, but yeah, we're going to be maybe soggy cakes, but we shall party like it's sunshine.
Excellent. I would
And
expect
it's worth
nothing
saying, it's
less.
worth saying it's the 10th anniversary of Fine Fest. And again, started by an individual, a couple of individuals, and driven by volunteers, and and one of those things that makes Ulverston fantastic. And
All
not
right.
at all twee, not at all twee.
Ian,
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think you covered a lot of what I was going to say. I think that the bike culture has kind of a history of repeating events. A lot of the bike events that happen almost in secret have been happening for decades. So I think repeatability would be very, very up there, especially after bikers themselves seeing the people being interested in themselves. Normally these events are very insular, but actually having other people other than bikers interested in what they're doing, I think would actually bring them again. I think there's a bike culture also if you want to talk about the green, not entirely green, it's an alternative transport. We don't all have to drive around in our cars. We can actually use machines that can do up to 80, 90 miles at a gallon without, as much as a footprint as a car. I know 40,000 of them is a different kettle of fish, but at least it's bringing it into the fore. Bikes are kind of, it almost feels as though governments are trying to get rid of bikes by the way the legislation's coming in. So I think there's an interest from that point of view if you want to look at alternative transports. So yeah, I think repeatability would be quite achievable, if not on the same scale.
Yeah.
So,
thanks, Ian. So just listening to Joe and everyone else on the call so far this morning, it's just great that actually people sort of collaborated and the council got involved. And it's really, it's rare that you hear someone praising a local authority sometimes for actually getting involved and putting the money where their mouth is, and sort of doing what the people want them to do. So I wonder, I'm sure there'll be conversations and discussions going on within Westmorland and Furness now about what's next. Is there something next? How could this sort of wave continue to be ridden for the future? But if it was a really good example of people coming together and all moving in the same direction, then that's a triumph in itself, I would suggest. And it's really interesting, Joe, you said right at the start of your presentation, it feels like Barrow is on the cusp of something. I'm not going to disagree with that. I don't live near Barrow. I don't live in Barrow, but I hear great things about Barrow, much more than it feels like I used to. And that's credit and tribute to lots of people doing lots of really good things in Barrow. So I really hope that this is an example of much more stuff that's going to continue to come as well, and maybe set examples for other parts of Cumbria, let alone the Northwest, about how you can do things, you know, in a civic society. Thank you very much. There's some really interesting comments and chat as well. I'm not going to play the 2 clips. If you want to dig out some footage of Dave Day, you just search Dave Day on the internet and you'll find some great clips. Lots of people have just made little films of their own experiences of Dave Day as well. Some great footage from kind of helmet cams and stuff like that. Really, you know, it's lovely when it comes from the ground up, isn't it? And this is a really good example of that. Joe, thank you so much.
Could you recommend one, Tom?
Yeah.
I think Lily's interview with BBC Breakfast, or was it News, or was it the Northwest? No, I think it was the Northwest interview. She did
Lily was Dave's wife, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Watch that one. It's really moving.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, and really nice to bring it to the fore. This was your idea to talk about it, Joe, and it was a great idea. And it's so good when we can just react to things freshly on this call as well, and talk about it as a network. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of that. Really appreciated it. Great stuff. But more good stuff for the rest of the call. Let's sort of flip this on its head almost. And as you say, you and Zoe, I know, have been working together on various things in recent times. Zoe, tell us a story about what Westmorland and Furness are doing to help green what's going on, and also how the culture sector can perhaps get a little bit more involved. I know Lorna's going to say a few things as well, but over to you, Zoe.
Lorna will.
Your slides, which Amy's going to pull up too.
Yeah, sure. No, I was just going to say briefly, I think it's so interesting, the sustainability challenge that we all face rubs up against the history of our culture in such a fascinating way in lots of different areas. And it's one that my husband works with, the Woodland Trust, and they have this with farmers. You know, it's happening everywhere. And I think it's really important to respect the cultural element as well. And I feel like there's work that we could do, Joe, around that and trying to understand how you unpick some of this around sustainability. So that was just a comment on Dave Day, but it looked absolutely amazing. And yeah, I'd say hi everyone. I'm Zoe. I'm the project manager for the Green Enterprise Hub at Cumbria Action for Sustainability, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the project that Joe and I have been involved in, which is also something wonderful that Westmorland and Furness have been involved in, helping us to create. It was really an idea that came from the work that Cavs has done over several years around trying to help Cumbria to get to net zero by 2037. And through that, we've made a network of different people who are really passionate about it in the local area, specialists in their individual areas. And the idea of the hub was to bring all of these people together so that we can help people to access sort of low cost and subsidized advice through the hub. And also there was a period where we had some grants, which unfortunately we've now spent, but we do have lots of kind of advice and events and things going on that we'd love to help you access. Tom mentioned at the beginning that we were really keen to get the word out to the Arts Network as well, which is part of why I wanted to come along this morning. So I was going to say that I imagine climate change is something that's important to many of you as well. And we know that organisations also have a whole range of other things that they're contending with, from communicating with your audience to reducing your operating costs and attracting new customers. And the thing that we found is that some of those challenges can also be addressed by becoming more sustainable. So we hope that it's something where if we offer you support, it will also help you to address some of the other challenges. So do you want to pop on to the next slide now, Amy? That would be brilliant. So this is just to give you an idea, this is some of the consultants that we're working with. So obviously Joe at ArtGene, and then working with Lancaster University, Cumbria Tourism, Tim Maiden from Green Small Business, and a whole range of other consultants. And then if you go on to the next slide, that's the range of advice that we've got available. So if you're interested in exploring electric vehicles, Simon Brayson, incredibly passionate, and will come and talk to you about vehicles and charge points. We've also got a whole range of advisors who can talk to you about building energy efficiency, or like renewables and a kind of whole range of looking at the building and what you could do to improve the efficiency of it. And then, as I said, we're working with Tim Maiden, whose specialism is in carbon auditing. And he can also look at like really specific auditing for things like a website, which could be quite a significant factor for an arts organization. And also that the kind of the environmental management that planning that he does is really about developing a narrative with you around how sustainable you are now, where you want to get to, and really supporting you on that journey. Also gives you accreditation, which is a nice way to communicate with an audience. We've got lots of training on offer as well. So the carbon literacy training that CAS has been doing for years, we're able to subsidise through the hub. So that helps to give you some information about climate change and empower you to do something about it. And then we're also putting together a bespoke carbon action training course, which delves deeper into the solutions. And then as as Jo mentioned, she's made some really beautiful films, and one of them was about Full of Noises in Barrow. So we decided to do an event on the 25th of June, which is to give everyone a bit of a tour of their business, their arts organisation, where they've done a really impressive energy retrofit. So if you have a look at the case studies link that Joe's just popped in the chat, that's a link to the film as well. And then do come along to the event. That will be at their venue in Peel House in Barrow. And so if you pop onto the next slide, this is just a few of the organisations that we've supported. It's really wide range. So we've worked with Basecamp North Lakes. So Emma and Terry there had lots of different support, including one of our chefs, Nick Lancaster, came along and talked to them about creating a low carbon food menu. They've got some specific low carbon food on their menu now, and they've also got lots of worms from Anna de la Vega, who's the urban worm, who came along and helped them with their composting. And then Fell Brewery had advice from Simon Brace, who's our EV consultant, and you can see from what they've said that they found that really valuable. He's a very genuine guy, used to be a radio DJ, and is just really passionate about electric vehicles. And then Can Do FM had an energy advice visit, which highlighted some quite large energy savings that they could make, and some of them quite low cost interventions to address some of the challenges of existing buildings, which we know are very significant. So lots of other case studies on the website. If you pop onto the next slide. So I'm going to hand over to Lorna in a moment. I just wanted to highlight that this support is available to social enterprises and businesses, also charities. It's basically anyone who's got a paid member of staff and is constituted, who's within Westmorland and Furness, or has significant activity in the area. So it's quite broad. We're keen to support as many people as we can. So do get in touch. And it's funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund as well. So similar links. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll hand over to Lorna now, who some of you know already, obviously. So we've been really pleased to be able to help Lorna. She makes very beautiful spelt basketry in the Grisel Forest, and we gave her a little bit of advice on retrofitting an existing building and around specific electric vehicles for coppicing work. And we also met up at a recent event which was put on by Lancaster University in Ford Park and Ulverston to explore innovative ways to create sustainable businesses. So I'll hand over to Lorna.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning, everyone. So Zoe said I had quite a lot of help from the hub recently, and the event I went to, one of the events at Ford Park in Ulverston, and that was really good as well, just to meet other businesses who are sort of working, on have similar sort of thinking about trying to improve the sustainability, and made some good, I suppose it was like a networking, but without being like cheesy. It was really nice to meet other businesses through that as well. Made a few contacts and have a sort of collaborative project coming up as a result of that as well. And I can't remember what her name was from Lancaster Uni. Is it?
Joanne Larty.
Yeah, she was really really enthusiastic and helpful, and there's been sort of a bit of follow-on communication after that as well about some project ideas I have coming up as well. So I suppose my business is kind of inherently sustainable, so I think in the past I might have been like a bit reluctant to think I needed to get advice or help. But I've got a project to sort of renovate an old building specifically that I could do with some advice with. So that's why I got in touch with Zoe, and to sort of see if there were any grants available. Always on the lookout for some money, and it's been really useful. Zoe has been very thorough and very patient with my sort of somewhat slow brain, and yeah, the amount of time like they've sort of put into helping me, I think is and I assume she's doing that with like all of the other businesses as well, so it's been really useful. And yeah, and I had Simon, the electric vehicle man, he came out to visit me about I need to get a quad bike, so I was looking into the possibility of getting an electric quad and running it off grid, which was sort of seems to be quite a challenge. So that was yeah, he's very enthusiastic and a good fun. And then I had another visit from the buildings man,
John
John?
John, yeah.
So yeah, that was really nice, and it's really exciting just to share this sort of renovation project with some people as well, because I haven't really sort of publicly talked about it much yet. Yeah, so it was really good to get that advice and a bit of help with like the logistics of trying to work out what to do. And yeah, I think my projects are maybe a little bit unusual compared to other people's. But I suppose every business is different, and every business has different sustainability
And
needs.
sometimes it must be difficult to know where to start on this stuff as well. I suppose when you've got someone who can speak language that you understand and you know, perhaps give priorities, etc., that's a useful consultation, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a bit of an overwhelming project, and John sort of said, well, you know, let's start with insulation, or let's start with, you know, it's really good to have someone who knows what is possible as well. So yeah, it was really useful. I really highly recommend it. Getting involved in any way you can, and obviously anything to make businesses greener is going to be good anyway. Yeah,
thanks so much, Lorna. That's really kind of you to say all of that. It's it's a lovely project, honestly, working with people like you, and there've been lots that we found really inspiring businesses, and that's the bit that I've got like a list as long as my arm to write case studies about all the people we've worked with. So it's been a joy, and we've got another sort of 6-7 months of it left. So yeah, even if it's not applicable to people on this call, if there's anyone that you know who might be interested, we're giving away all this support. We'd be really keen to help people. So maybe just pop on to the next slide, and I'll just finish off, and then we'll take some questions. So I just wanted to highlight that CAFS also has a whole other range of support available. So Zero Carbon Cumbria, which Jay mentioned, is a kind of Cumbria-wide project to help the county become potentially the first zero carbon county. So it's really ambitious by 2037. And then we've got projects like Hold Cozy Homes, which help people with insulating their homes, and Solar Made Easy, Retrofit Made Easy, all these services that can help you along the journey towards sustainability. So yeah, and then just move on to the final slide. I'll wrap this up. So if you want to take the next step, get in touch. We'd be really keen to help you. Here's our email address, so greenhub@cafs.org.uk, and have a look at the website and get some inspiration, and just let us know if we can help you in any way. That's grand. Thanks for the time, Tom. I really appreciate that.
No, that's great, Zoe. Thank you, and thanks, Lorna, as well. Anybody got any questions? I just see in chat some observations of other people that have done partnership projects to help take, you know, the sustainability story forwards. Anybody got any questions for Zoe or any comments? CMC's done some stuff. Has it Kate, with the CAFs?
Not with CAFs, but we've been working with Museum Development, who run a project called Roots and Branches, which is all about sustainability and carbon literacy training, and supporting museums across the Northwest and now further beyond in the country, actually. to make sure that our museums are buildings, which are often, well, actually always our biggest issue as well as our biggest asset, are as that we reduce the carbon footprint of our buildings and what we do as much as possible. So we've delivered carbon literacy training across Cumbria Museum Consortium and many other museums in the last year, but there's so much more to do.
Okay. And Rachel's put in there about Theatre by the Lake working in partnership as well. Ian, you've got your hand very politely raised.
Hi, sorry, I don't mean to be hugging the screen here. I think Zoe, I'm very interested. A lot of my clients are engineering firms, and they are headless chickens when it comes to trying to look at their green footprint. So I'd love to get in touch and talk to you about that. If that's okay.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. Of course, yeah. No, we're really aware that the engineering and manufacturing sector has a particular challenge. We work with, I don't know if you come across CBEN, so they have very specific knowledge in kind of decarbonisation for industrial sector.
Right.
So that would be a good fit.
Okay, well, they just don't know where to start. They work in these huge cold industrial buildings, just as Laura was suggesting. There might not be new buildings, but old buildings, but they're a disaster from the heating point of view, even on that basic level. And if you've got consultants and stuff to talk to them, that'd be fantastic.
Definitely. No, we'd love to help. Yeah, absolutely. Do just get in touch there. I'll put the email address in here, and then anyone who wants to can just click on that.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Zoe. Interesting debate about Cumberland versus Westmorland and Furness. Who's more organised? Who's committing more to arts and culture as well? Perhaps that's a conversation for another day. But we're a year and a bit now, aren't we, after the separation took place, and it is time to start to compare and contrast, I think, how each of the local authorities are behaving and doing, and perhaps are perceived to be behaving and doing as well. Something about leadership that I think maybe it was Derek mentioned there as well. Okay, Amy, did you just want to mention, because I've obviously got a conflict of interest here, did you just want to mention some training that's coming up?
Yes, which Tom is delivering this training, so it's got to be good. It's going to be amazing. Obviously, Tom presents every single week on these calls. He does our podcast, Behind the Scenery. So the training is on presentation skills. It's going to be really useful if you've got any job interviews coming up, if you need to pitch to funders, or if you just want to, get a bit more confidence with presentation, because it's not the easiest thing. So I've put the link into chat. There's an online session, online presentation skills, which is booked up. But the one that's got tickets available is the in-person presentation skills. It's on the 25th of June at Reg Ed. So yeah, links in the chat for that.
There may be chocolate. That's all I'm saying. Okay, thank you ever so much. It's been a really interesting hour this morning. Really interesting to hear about Dave Day. And Joe, thank you for sharing your thoughts about that, and everybody else too. And Zoe and Lorna, really good stuff as well about how we can help ourselves to prepare for the future in a slightly greener way, and what support is available. Next week, we're going to hear from Jack McNeil and Azra Matala, two of the Catalyst artists, who again just going to share where they are with their projects and a bit more about what they do and who they are. And then also we're going to hear from Joe Bramley Wright from Eden Arts about this Epona project, which is this idea of a big fell pony being scribed onto the side of a hill in the Loon Gorge, a bit like sort of the white horses that you see sometimes in the south of England. So ideas coming there, and we're going to hear a bit more from Joe about what that idea is and how that might happen in this fine, fair county of ours. But that's it for this morning. Really good to see everybody. Thanks for your time this morning. Hope you had a nice hour, and I shall see you again very soon. Thanks, everybody.